Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our social media best practices webinar. Just to set some expectations, this is a high level sort of beginner's look at some of the things that can help boost what you're already doing or get you started if you're kind of a newbie. We're going to highlight mostly just the Meta Suite, which is Facebook and Instagram. And here's just a few of the things that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the Meta Business Suite. We're going to go over some key terms for you to know to help you understand as you get started. And then we're going to talk a little bit about content variation. And just to give you an idea of my background, I am the marketing services manager for GCFA UMC Support. I started as a graphic designer and moved my way through to strategic marketing. My background, I've worked in the music industry and in higher education, and have been with GCFA for almost 10 years. And I'm really excited to be here today. And I am going to now hand it over to Maya. She will introduce herself and get us started on our first topic.
Hi everyone, my name is Maya. I have been at GCFA since February of last year. I do all things social media here, along with email newsletters, some press releases, and I'm looking forward to helping you guys with some social media tips today. So first we're going to begin with the Meta Business Suite. And this is essential because it's made life so much easier when it comes to posting and scheduling content. When you connect your Facebook and your Instagram within the Meta Business Suite, it creates a seamless social media management experience. It's truly a one-stop destination for posting content, scheduling content, messaging, and analytics reporting. So let's dive into all of the features. This is a snapshot of how simple posting can be inside of the Meta Business Suite. Here you can see we've connected our Facebook and our Instagram. We've chosen our two platforms to share content to, the date and the time on the left. And on the right, you can see a draft of what the post will look like when it goes live. You're able to review it, and you can also add people on your team to review it and approve it or edit it before it goes live on socials. It's very convenient and a one-stop shop, truly, for all of your posting needs. Next, we have the central messaging portal. Now, this is all on Facebook.com. On the left-hand side, you'll see all of these features in the Meta Business Suite. And here is where you can view all of your messages and your comments from both Facebook and Instagram, all in one. If you click on each tab, there are ways to maneuver to quickly see the latest interactions on your page. And there's now even a WhatsApp option, which is super convenient if you're working with people internationally. Next, we have Content Analytics. This is a snapshot of the portal again. You can see your likes and reactions, shares, and comments. So likes occur when people like your posts. Reactions occur when people like, heart, laugh, hopefully, in good nature, sad react, or care/support react. Shares also occur when people share your content, and comments are comments. To the right, what you can't see is the interactions tab, and that basically it adds up all of the likes, shares, and comments. You're able to filter between post and stories, media type, and content placement, just to help you dive deeper into the analytics as well. Next, we have the comprehensive analytics of pages and posts. So at the top, let's talk about reach. Reach is something we'll dive into a little bit later, but it basically defines reach as the number of people that have seen your posts. So in this snapshot, 43,000 people have been reached by posts on Facebook and 2,800 on Instagram. So it just gives you a wide view angle of how well your content is performing and who it's reaching. You're also able to view visits, and this is the number of people who have visited your Facebook page, whether they clicked it by seeing your post in the feed or they just searched your page. You're able to see how many people have visited your page, which is super helpful to see if you're attracting any new interactions or audience members. Next. So I just wanted to reiterate that the Meta Business Suite is free and available within Facebook.com. It's very simple to set up. You just want to connect the two pages. While it's 100% free, your ministry may be interested in upgrading to a paid tool that offers more features and more analytics into your audience and your posts. Our favorite platforms are Sprout Social, Hootsuite, and Buffer. Next. Okay, key terms to know. It wouldn't be right if we didn't dive into some important definitions, so let's get started. Engagement. Now, we'll use this term often. Engagement is the interactions, likes, comments, shares that people have with your posts. This is very important when it comes to the algorithm that we'll dive into later. The reach, again, is the number of users who see your content. It's when your post is in the Facebook feed or when it's sent to someone, your reach will multiply. And feed algorithm is what determines how your content is shown to users. It typically is based on their interest and interactions. However, there are some things that you can do personally to help your post perform better to beat the algorithm. Okay, it can be tricky to outsmart the algorithm, but we can give you a few pointers to get started. So first, by posting content that your audience interacts with, you'll receive high engagement on posts. So make sure you post things that could be appealing, whether it's an upcoming church event or volunteers needed. You just want to kind of target your posts to match and meet your audience's needs. The algorithm will take note of engagement, so they'll see the likes, comments, and shares, and this will boost your ranking in the algorithm. All in all, the algorithm will be more likely to show your posts because it notices that people are engaging and interacting with your content, and this will enhance the visibility of your posts. It's like a repetitive cycle of just figuring out the best way to get your content to perform in the algorithm. If a post has significantly higher engagement, think about why. We're going to give you some tips later on about types of things to include in your post to make it perform better, but be careful to use that data to inform future content. This is very important. Facebook pages versus Facebook groups. Which is right for your ministry? Now, both exist to help your organization share information that's important for your audience. However, on a page, only your ministry can share content. A group is slightly different. Any member can post in a group. It can be a moderator, it can be approved group members, or you can have a pre-approval process where they're pending posting until approved by a moderator or group administrator. Facebook pages are generally public, while Facebook groups can be public or invite only, meaning you can invite people to join your group, or you can wait for them to send requests to join your group and you can either approve or deny. Facebook pages, The posts made on a page only appear in the newsfeed. Meanwhile, posts made in groups can show in a separate groups feed, which makes it easier to find the content shared because of the algorithm. Some post examples for Facebook pages include upcoming events, announcements, and ministry updates. For a Facebook group, think of it as a mixture of Reddit meets Twitter/Facebook. It's great for open discussions, asking questions, and sharing information or ideas. So you really have to figure out which one is best for your ministry's needs. And it's not an either or. You could definitely have both if you feel the need. More definitions. We have posts, stories, highlights, and reels. Posts are standard updates to followers in your feed. This is majorly what we've been talking about thus far. They're great for regular updates to update your audience. Story posts are posts that disappear after 24 hours. They appear in a slightly different area, but they're ideal for urgent updates or interesting content. Highlights are curated story posts that you save to your profile. So it's best for saving your best content to your page so anyone and everyone can come find it on their own time. And lastly, we have reels. To keep it real, they are short, engaging videos under 90 seconds, and they're ideal for creative content. So if you've been on Instagram or Facebook and you've seen the videos that take up about all of your phone screen with a long caption typically, those are most likely reels, and they're very captivating and are the reason that many of us are on our phone for much longer than intended. So it could be a great idea to implement some reels in your ministry to keep people coming back for content.
All right, let's talk a little bit about how we shape the content that we're looking at. Let's talk about what size your posts, your stories, your highlights, all of that should be. First, we're going to start with Facebook. Now, Facebook has more options. So you have your story, which essentially, and these are pixels, and pixels is just how digital media understands the information we're giving it. So if that's an unfamiliar term, don't let it scare you. It's basically how the information in your picture is configured. So when you have a story, you're going to want 1080 by 1920, which is basically your phone camera, most phone cameras, but vertical. And then your cover photo, that's that big long photo that's going to go behind your profile photo. The profile photo is typically round, but the dimensions are 180 by 180. And then here we get into different kinds of things. So if you have a post on your feed and it's some kind of a graphic, then you're going to do 1200 by 630. If it's a fundraiser image, you have a slight variation. It's 800 by 300. And then you have ads. And then the carousel is like those images where there's multiple images that people scroll through. And then for Instagram, you have a few less options. So on Instagram, you have a portrait post, then you have a square post, and those are slightly different. But then you also have your profile picture, which, as you'll notice, is a square dimension, but I think still shows up. It shows up as a circle. So you have a landscape post ad, and then you have a story or a reel, which is the same as Facebook. So the good thing about linking those accounts together is if you have a story or a reel that you add to Instagram, it's already sized and can be added to Facebook pretty seamlessly. All right, let's talk a little bit about the variations of content. The first thing we're going to cover is social media branding. Branding can be a bit of a scary word if you're not, or a marketing term that you think doesn't apply. Really, when we talk about branding, the thing I'm mostly talking about is your visual identity as a ministry. Most people think of a logo, but it's not just a logo. It's also how you represent your ministry through verbal elements. So like your bio and all of those things. And these things become really important across the different platforms for social media. So, the first thing, when you're resizing your logo to fit those dimensions we just looked at, you don't want to squeeze your logo or stretch your logo. You want to resize it so that it fits within the proportion your logo is designed. The reason that's important is because you want the most accurate representation of your brand or your ministry as possible. So you want to make sure that you keep those proportions the same across all your platforms and you don't distort them. The other thing that's really important is keeping your logos consistent across all platforms. So if you notice here, you're looking at like our YouTube, you're looking at our Instagram and our Facebook, and we have the same profile picture across all platforms. People are scrolling back and forth between different platforms all throughout the day. And so while your contents might be different across platforms, your presence across platforms should be the same, so that no matter what platform people are on, they know they're hearing from your ministry specifically. And that goes the same for your bio. It's typically better to keep your bio the same across all platforms, and any other interesting information that you post about your ministry in terms of like your profile. You want to keep that consistent across all platforms. I'm going to kick it back to Maya, and she's going to talk a little bit about the content that you write for your posts.
So for Facebook, the ideal character count is 40 to 80 characters, and for Instagram, it's under 150. The limits for these are exceedingly higher. However, you must remember that with great power comes great responsibility. We have very short attention spans these days, and you don't want to lose your audience. So it's best to keep the content short, kind of condense it, and it can be tricky. Me, I am kind of a long form writer. I like to use my words, but it's best for social media to keep it short and keep it simple. Next, we have the best times to post on Facebook and Instagram. So this is for Facebook. It's a heat map, and the darkest colors show the highest engagement, and the lightest colors show the lowest engagement. It looks like around 9 to 12, Monday through Friday. Those are peak days and times for best engagement. However, it's important to know that this is just an example. It varies by industry. So with churches, of course, Sundays may be the best time to post. I think it's always best to experiment. Experimentation is key here. Your followers may be completely opposite of this heat map. It's really just trial and error till you find the sweet spot for content. And this is the heat map for Instagram. Here, it's slightly later in the morning, Monday through Friday, but same, a little bit lighter Saturday and Sunday. So it's key here to remember it's different for each industry, different for each ministry, and it's really just trial and error till you figure it out. Calls to action. It's important here to use action words. This will really inspire your audience and get the people moving to do, the desired outcome. So some examples of calls to action are join us this Sunday, and then you'd put your church's address or the time of the sermon for them to show up and attend the service. Watch our sermon now, and you would include the link to the sermon. Other calls to action are share this with a friend and sign up for our newsletter, and this would be a link to the newsletter. So you'd ideally put the words of your post and then the call to action at the bottom. And this should help inspire some engagement, which will help with the algorithm, interactions, comments, likes, everything that'll help increase your page's visibility in the long run.
Okay, so we've talked about post content in terms of verbal content or words, and now we're going to talk a little bit about media content, right? These are going to be pictures and video. And I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that video content is king for engagement. Users retain 95% of video content, which is pretty incredible. Um, so we know automatically that when you want to get your audience's attention, video is just going to be the best way to do that. On average, users are watching 17 hours of online video content a week, which is a whole lot. And I won't disclose if mine is more or less. Um, Probably a little more. But there's a ton of content being viewed via video online, and it's happening all the time, day and night. 84% of people said that they visit a website after watching a shared video. So when you're thinking about why you're using social media, you're using it to basically communicate and connect around your ministry. And so when you have a website that gives all the information about your church, people are more likely to click through to that website because they've watched a video. And the last fact that I have here is 86% of consumers spend a quarter or more of their social media time just watching videos, a quarter or more. So a lot of people are going to social media specifically for video content. So the more you can use video, the better. And that might seem pretty overwhelming, but here are a few keys I think that can help. The first thing is keep it short. A short form video delivers the highest ROI, which is return on investment. 81% of consumers want to see short form video, and 66% of viewers, they'll watch the full video if it's less than 60 seconds. So think about what are the top things you want to communicate in a video. And then remember that if you can keep it shorter, you're going to retain those viewers throughout the whole video, which most of the time, we're putting our calls to action towards the end of the video. So it's like we're giving information and we're saying, come to this event, or we're maybe talking about a sermon that meant something, or whatever that call to action is that Maya had mentioned earlier. If you can keep your video shorter, you're going to get people to that a lot. You're going to get a higher percentage of people to that ending. And I'm going to show you a video that we did to promote our newsletter. So this was just something we did really quickly. It didn't take a ton of time. And it was under, I hope it's under 60 seconds. I'm pretty sure it is, but let's look at this video real quick. So that video that we did, we actually created that with Adobe Express. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I think when we see that kind of content, it can seem very overwhelming, right? Because it's like, well, I don't know how to do any of that. But these tools that we put up here, so there's Canva, Adobe Express, those are the two easier ones. And then you have Adobe Premiere Rush, you have Apple iMovie, and then there's CapCut, which my fourth grader loves CapCut and she can do it. So I think once you get into some of these platforms, what you learn is that it's not actually that hard to make some of these really catching, sort of gripping videos that get people's attention. And you're using these tools. And the great thing about something like a Canva or Adobe Express or even CapCut is that you have access to a lot of creative assets. So you might find let's say that you're wanting to do an inspiring quote from your pastor's sermon, or an inspiring quote from a donor, right? You can go into something like Canva or Adobe Express, grab a really cool video of maybe it's a sunset, or maybe it's even, let's say that your ministry is on the coast and it's just the waves rushing in, right? And then you pull that quote over top. That's going to get you more engagement than just having a picture of a quote. And it's not as hard to do. And there's a ton of resources in these platforms, and there's a lot of tutorials. So it may seem overwhelming at first, But I think if you can give yourself a little time to dive in and play, which is the most fun part for me, you'll find that you can create some really engaging content without a lot of resources and without a lot of expertise. And the last thing is 60%, 69% of viewers, they are watching these videos on their smartphones. So make sure when you're creating this content, you're sizing your videos accordingly. And then there's photos, right? So we talked about video content. Now we're going to talk about photo content. People connect with real people. If you can see in this picture, this was a picture that we took of our staff during general conference. There was a Thursdays in Black, and everybody wore black, and it was specifically to connect to, a ministry that was happening. And what we notice is that then, and anytime we post pictures of our staff, our engagement increases by 186%, which is huge, right? And it's largely because people connect with real people. And they might recognize someone they know, or, recognize the appeal that that person is calling for. And so while you can use stock images of things that are stationary, like you might use a stock image of a mountain or of a building or something, when you're using stock images of people don't connect with that as well. So if you're going to use stock images, you're going to want to stay away from using them with people. And when you want to use people to connect, you're going to want to do that with real people that are part of your ministry. All right. And the last bit that we'll talk about in terms of content is graphic content. You can share ministry statistics, pastoral quotes. Maybe it's an interesting Bible verse. One of the things that we've done in the past is created holiday graphics for people to download for free. And so all of that stuff can be done, again, going back to tools like Canva and Adobe Express that you're using to do your video. They also can help you create content for graphic posts. And the cool thing about that too is that within those platforms, they give you the option to immediately resize for all the different ways you want to post something right there in the platform. And then you just download the each of the size versions. And so you want to make sure that when you're doing a graphic post, you're not putting a ton of text on the graphic, because that's going to be where the post underneath is where you're going to put a lot of that content. The graphic is really meant to really grab people's attention. So we want to keep the text readable and keep it minimal. And just a little bit of a plug, if you do want to use some of these Adobe products, UMC Support does have a 20% discount on Acrobat Pro, and we can source Creative Cloud as well. So you can just kind of scan that QR code if you're interested in that. We can save you a couple dollars a month on these. And like I said, even if you go with minimal platform access on these, they're so super helpful, and they can really help you streamline the things you're creating for your social media. So that's the really high level, the best practices that we could put together. And so now we're going to take some questions if you have them. We covered a lot pretty quickly, so we're happy to kind of dive into any questions you might have. And if we don't have the answer, we will find the answer before we send out this recap to all of you and include all of that. So let's get some questions going here.
All right. First question we have is, I use Facebook a lot. He says his name's Carrie. He says he's a 52-year-old male. I use Facebook a lot. I haven't used Instagram in years. How important is it to use both platforms?
So I think it's important to use both platforms depending on what you're trying to say and who you're trying to say it to. So let's go back to this idea of a Facebook page versus a Facebook group, right? Just within Facebook, you have two options there, and both of those options do different things. So when you're thinking about using Instagram, think about how if you don't use Instagram, most people, when they're using it, it's real scroll and it's real It's real scroll heavy and it's real image heavy. So, it's important to use those platforms because you're engaging with people differently than you would. And also think about your demographic. If you have a high percentage of your demographic is on Facebook, then you might have a smaller demographic on Instagram, but it's still important to reach them. And the content you're posting will be slightly different. So I think, for me, I think of it as being important based on what you're trying to convey and who you're trying to reach. Those would be the things that I would be analyzing to determine if I should be on both. But also because they're both part of Meta, it's actually a lot easier to be on both than it maybe would have been before Instagram joined Meta. So it's a little intimidating at first, but I think everyone would benefit from trying to be on both. Maya, what do you think? Do you have any feedback there?
Yes, I'd say definitely with the ease. I hate to say ease because it's not always easy, but with Meta being connected to Facebook and Instagram, it takes a lot of the manpower out of the equation. You're able to just post to both with one click. Now, we did go into the dimensions of the different platforms, so that could be something to keep an eye out for. But Canva, different things have a resize tool, so it's very simple to resize the image so it appropriately fits for the platform. But yeah, I'm a heavy advocate for both. You could reach a complete different audience that you didn't even know or want to reach on Instagram. But I guess it really depends on your bandwidth and your goals.
Yeah. And think too, just like I said about your demographic, I am 46 and I exclusively am on Instagram. So if you're trying to communicate with me as one of your demographics, you're not going to get anything from me on Facebook. And I'm just one example of somebody who is more of an Instagram user. So I hope that answers your question.
Melissa, just to elaborate a little bit further on that, can you speak a little bit to the fact that at GCFA, we've done some research for our own audiences and the platforms that they use and chosen not to invest time and energy into a platform that we didn't think would pay dividends. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the questions that we had at the beginning of the year is whether or not we should be doing TikTok. This is a great example of this. And what we did is we kind of looked at what other ministries are doing on TikTok, the demographic of people on TikTok, and then we polled our actual audience via our newsletter asking what are the primary sources, social media platforms that you use to get, this kind of information, the kind of information we might be wanting to disseminate. And all of those things showed us that TikTok really wouldn't be worth the amount of time that we have, similar to most United Methodist ministries. We are a small staff trying to accomplish a whole lot of things. And so we really did have to decide that while this might be something we move into in the future, for right now, our staff time is best utilized in these places where we can get the best return on the amount of time we're spending. And so I think to your point, Jensen, again, thinking about these platforms and questioning whether or not you actually have the capacity. And, part of the reason why we're connecting Instagram and Facebook and not talking about Twitter and TikTok and LinkedIn and all of those here is because these are the two platforms that are easiest to connect and do together, which minimizes your staff time or your volunteer time. So, at some point you can start looking across all platforms and making decisions. But if you want to do more, these two are the easiest to combine. But to your point, I do think it's best to really evaluate whether or not it is worth the time and energy it would take for y'all to do it.
Maya, this next one I'm going to lob straight to you. Ray says he currently uses Facebook. How do you sign up for Meta Suite to get Instagram? So I'm going to reword it and ask you, do you have to have Instagram before signing up for Meta Suite to link them? And how does that work?
You can do both. You can already have an account and connect them. Can I put a screenshot in the chat of how to do that? Would that be okay? Okay. I did a quick search and I found how to connect them for everyone asking. But it's a quite simple process to create a new account from the Facebook to link it in the Meta Business Suite. It's I think they're aware of the benefits and also the challenges that come with the account setup, so they make it a very simple process on the Facebook connection with Instagram side.
And we can include that article too in our follow-up when we send out the email and the screenshot too, if that's helpful.
Daniel K asks, what is the ideal number of platforms to keep for a church? And I just summarizing what you two have already said, it really seems like you look at your demographic and audience, but also the media type that you're looking to share, right? Some are more primarily graphics based, some are more story based. So what insight do you have for that?
I would say if you have the capacity to do video, like and the video that we show is just one example of video. I mean, video doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be polished, and it can literally be a leader in your ministry getting on and saying, "Hey, let's say it's your pastor. Hey, I'm really excited to be with you all this morning. I'm going to cover this in my sermon today, and I really hope to see you or this weekend." Right. So it doesn't have to be something flashy and graphic heavy. It can be something very simple and connecting. But if you have the capacity to do video, then I think that expands the amount of platforms that you use, right? TikTok is great for that. Instagram is great for that. Facebook is great for that. But if you're starting out small and you're like, I'm just going to try some graphic posts for a little while and see how those hit, then I think, start with Facebook and maybe Instagram. I don't think that the number of platforms matters. I think what matters is the way that you connect on those platforms. We could take one message and make the same message and put it on every platform, and it might work on Facebook and do nothing on Instagram because Instagram is different and people engage with it differently. So it matters more about if you're capable of using the platform and have the resources for it. I would say it's better to be killing it on just Facebook than to be doing well on Facebook, not as well on Instagram, worse on TikTok, and yet you're spending staff and volunteer time to hit all of those. That would be my recommendation, I think. Maya, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree. That's pretty symbolic of our own social media channels. Facebook is our primary engagement channel. So I definitely support Facebook over all the platforms, especially due to the evolution of social media these days. I think ministry wise, Facebook may be the top choice, and then Instagram a definite close second.
Yeah.
All right, we have a couple questions asking about the tools. You had the slide with the recommended tools, including Canva, Adobe Spark, etc. Are those paid tools?
Canva does have a free option and it's very minimal. So they are paid tools. Adobe Express is relatively cheap. Now I know that ministry budgets are very tight. So when I say relatively cheap, my husband is a small business owner and he was able to get it for maybe $12 a month. So I'm not going to assume that all churches have budget for that because I know that's not the case, but it's not, $500 a month. And it's worth it if, again, you have to, one of the things that we didn't highlight here, but one of the things that I would suggest is you want to think about what your social media goals are, right? If your goal is to bring people in to your ministry, or if you have a ministry that's, a nonprofit offshoot of your church and your goal is to get donations, right? Then all of a sudden now we're looking at, again, ROI. These are business terms, but they apply to ministry. They just apply differently. So return on investment, if you're investing, $200 a year on an Adobe platform, but you're bringing people in, and and it's actually expanding the reach of your ministry, and you're able to make a difference in your community because of that, then it might be worth it, right? Um, so they are paid, but they're really helpful. If you can find the money and you can learn them, they're so helpful. They're really helpful. And I love it because they make it super easy. Like, I have a background in graphic design, but just my husband doesn't. He has no idea. And so he can very easily get in there and make content that is appealing, without having the background. So I like these platforms for that reason. You don't have to really be a graphic designer to understand how to use them.
So, thank you. This next one's from Maya. Let's talk about the frequency of posting, and do you post the same thing across multiple platforms, like on the same day?
Yeah. So the frequency, again, with the algorithm, the more you post, the more chances your post will be displayed in a more favorable place. So I definitely support posting more than once a day. You don't want it to become spammy, but I would say around, if you have the time, maybe three is a good number. Two, you could post different verses, different sermon clips. I mean, there's so many options for content. In terms of tailoring it for each platform, if you're going to post something like a sermon that may be too long for Instagram, say you want to reroute them to YouTube, you may want to tailor your post by using like a link in bio feature, just so that people have a way to get to the content that you're trying to link them to. So I definitely recommend tailoring it a little bit just so it meets the needs of your content. Um, and then Facebook, again, the goal character limit is a little bit shorter than Instagram. So maybe just putting it in shorthand to capture attention the way that you want to would be ideal.
Awesome.
Melissa, do you have anything?
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, you can take the same idea of content and post it across platforms, but you just want to make sure that you're tailoring it to what that platform is doing, for sure. And the other thing I will say, you know, with using the Meta Suite, they do have the calendar feature. So you can actually, like, let's say you have a volunteer or you're short on staff. So there's two things that I would say. One is posting, and two is engagement. So the post, you can actually plan a month in advance. And that's what we do. We have what's called a content calendar, and we load everything on the content calendar that we want to post. That's different than engagement, because you want to have some time to respond to people when they post, right? Or when they comment on your post and you're reacting in real time. So you can cut your time down that you're spending when you can plan your posts in advance, and put those in that Meta Business Suite across both platforms. And you can even, you can plan 3 posts a day if you want to, and just say, I'm going to spend 2 hours at the front of every month to get everything loaded and scheduled. And then, I might take a couple, like 30 minutes a day, to look and see if anybody's reacted that I need to respond to or whatever. So it's different. And the suite does help you plan and minimize the amount of time you're spending by planning ahead.
Awesome. Deborah asks, she loves the idea of using real people instead of Adobe like stock images. Can we address the requirements for legal permissions? All right, I'm going to chime in on this one because I have a background in video production and photo release and talent release. This is not going to be legal advice. I'm going to give you best practices advice. I'll leave our legal department up to providing the legal advice. I will say that, okay, so first of all, if you're in a public space, let's say you're out on a public road and there's no expectation of privacy, that's the government's definition of you're allowed to use the likeness of another person. So you can capture someone's images, in a public setting. Now within the church, that's private property, right? So that's not really necessarily a public setting. The church that I worship at live streams, and we don't show close-ups of anyone in the sanctuary. It's not to say that they don't some of the people that sit in the front don't make it onto the video, but we really keep the camera focused on the stage, and the pastor makes an announcement. Hey, we're going, hello to those on the live stream. So people know that there's live. And I would say when you're taking pictures, and it's my experience that people let you know if they don't want their picture taken, and then you just respectfully be like, absolutely, no problem. If you're going to do, and the rule that we use in the industry is, if I'm taking a wide picture of a room full of people, then I'm not as worried about a photo release as if I'm taking a close up and showing one person. And that's really where you want to make sure you get permission. And there's photo releases available, like online. You could find a templated, photo release. So that's kind of my broad answer to that. Best practices. Let's see. Will we be able to watch this again? Yes, this webinar is being recorded, and the presentation, the slide deck, as well as the information that you've asked about will be linked, and all of it will be sent out in a follow-up email. Let's see. It says Canva is free for nonprofit. It's not easy though, because of the UMC nonprofit group ruling. Okay. Interesting.
And that's something that we can, I can ask our legal people just to look into and maybe get a little bit more information, if that's helpful too, before we send out the recap. Because I've not actually heard that. So that's interesting feedback. I would love to know more about that. I'll see.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense, because a lot of our UMC don't go through the IRS to get their tax exemption. They go through us through the group rule.
Oh, yeah.
I could see where that could cause an issue.
We might be able to find a way. So that's good information, and I can ask our legal team if there's anything we can do.
Yeah, we'll double check on that and get back to you all on that. That seems like a hurdle with as many UMC churches as we have. That seems like a hurdle we could and need to work through. So, let's see. What apps might you use to conduct a survey?
That's a great question. SurveyMonkey is good. I believe you'd need emails for that. But actually, you can do polls on Facebook. So if you're not directly asking what platform do you use, but you're wanting to know information about people, you can do that through Facebook. But also, if you send out regular email newsletters, you might check that platform. We use MailChimp, and they have an option where we can survey our email subscribers directly. And we can include links. We can actually embed a survey into the email. So SurveyMonkey, if you don't have a lot of, if you don't have an organized list and you're just wanting to reach out to people who you might have, or if you're not using a platform for email, SurveyMonkey is a good one. And then utilizing Facebook for polls if there's other questions you're asking, and then also checking your marketing email platform if you use one would be a good place to start.
Awesome. I am working on there's a lot of questions around copyright, which is not specific to this webinar. But we do have that information available on our website. If you go to gcfa.org, and in the search box, if you type in copyright, it'll pull up a list of assets that are available. I just put a link to the PDF that has the basics of copyright. But just a really quick touch, a specific question asking about live streaming and flagging for copyright. I will say this: even if your church gets the copyright license with CCLI, even if you fill out the documentation with YouTube and or Facebook, it is our experience that they shut you down first and ask questions later. You could even file the paperwork ahead of time, and it doesn't matter. They will shut you down first and ask questions later if they think you're playing copywritten music or video. And so that's why there's a lot of church streaming platforms out there that's specific for churches that avoid that type of shutdown. So, but that's, again, we have other webinars on our website dealing with that. So I'm going to leave it there. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Just looks like, a lot of questions around, or a lot of comments around the paperwork for Canva for it to be free. So we'll definitely look into that. I send a weekly email. It's not jazzy, plain text with an occasional bold text. Should I jazz it up?
So my response would be, what emails do you look at and open? And I don't know. I'm very graphically inclined because I am, my background's in graphic design, but I always, people connect with video, they connect with photos, they connect with images, even if they're not images of people. So again, it's the same thing with social media as with any marketing. Test, test, test. So what I would do if it were me is I would go ahead and jazz it up a little, and maybe say for 3 months, I'm going to send it jazzed up. And let's see how many more people open it. If you get more opens, if you get more people clicking through, if you have click-throughs, then you might want to spend more time making that more readable. Now, there are some scenarios where people are like, that looks too much like a marketing videos or marketing email, so I'm not going to look at it. So there's a balance, and it really does depend on your audience. But I always say test it. We had a format for our email newsletter that we had the same format for 2 years. And we started seeing our numbers going down in terms of people clicking through. And we were noticing that the skimmability of it was really hindering us. So we were like, well, let's try something new. And we did, and it increased all of our numbers, not a ton, but enough to really help us get the information out that we're trying to get out. So I would say use your own preferences. Like if you're somebody who likes to look at, imagery and all that when you're email, then probably the people you're sending to do as well. And then test, and see what works best.
Yeah, I agree. Not getting locked into one thing, right? So very good.
And that's the best part about digital media across the board, right? It can last forever. I get that. And you can always change, right? It's not something that's in print that costs $1,000 to redo. You can change. You can, when you're doing social, and we do this all the time. We can test to see how certain content hits, and then we pivot, right? So if we're like, wow, that did not hit at all, so let's pivot. Maybe we need to add a video instead. Maybe we need to add more compelling graphics. Maybe the wording was too long. And it's just, we're constantly pivoting, trying to figure out what works.
And even realizing what real world events are happening that could be competing for attention. So testing things doesn't mean just testing it once. It means going with that same structure multiple times. In our content meetings, we had discussions leading up to this month because last week were jurisdictional conferences. And so if we're trying to reach communicators in conferences, they're all really busy. That's not the right time to be trying to reach out to them. So just thinking about those real world environments. So are you posting these newsletters so you can see who's opening them, or do you have an email set up to tell you?
So we use an email platform that gives us a ton of analytics that we review every month. It tells me how many people are opening it. It even tells me how many people are opening it multiple times. So I get a rate of like, we had, 1,000 opens and then maybe 850 unique opens. It lets me know where people are engaging with our content the most. Obviously, very heavy in the US, but it'll even break it down to states. It tells me the device people are using, whether it's Android or Apple. So it's really, we use a platform, and we chose that platform because it gives such great analytics. And really helps us understand how people are engaging with our content. And I think if you go back to I won't go back, but if you look at one of the slides that Maya posted that shows the analytic option in the Meta Suite, it's the same thing. You can really dive in and see some pretty interesting things about how people are engaging with your content. So, again, a lot of this depends on staff time. It depends on availability. do what you can. But those kind of analytics are always helpful because, again, it can help you pivot and change your content based on what people are connecting with. And really, this is about connection. We're using marketing language a lot because that's kind of the world we're in. But even for us, like, this is about connection. We're trying to connect with people and create resources and help people and support people. And it's the same thing with all ministries. This isn't just kind of like marketing and branding. Like, you have real things you're doing to improve your communities and to get people connected to the gospel and to make disciples. Those things really matter. And so finding ways for them to work really matter.
All right, awesome. We are at the end of our time. So I just want to go through a couple more things to remind you. You will get the follow-up email after this webinar. If you registered for this webinar, it will include links that we've talked about. It'll include the slides and a link to the recording of the video. If you would like to subscribe to our newsletter, that code is a QR code is on the screen right now. And we put a lot of great resources and announcements about future webinars and all of that good stuff in the newsletter. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for the phenomenal questions.
Yeah, great questions.
Thank you, Melissa and Maya, for all of
Yeah,
your
thank you so much.